Hello, my name's Brian. I'm an Agile management consultant, and earlier last year I left the smoke of old London town and headed north. Welcome to glorious Yorkshire. Now I'm using the Agile management practices to get stuff done around the house. We have some grand plans on the roadmap. But plans are nothing. We've actually got to get stuff done. But if agility is just a bunch of silly words to you, then don't worry. Stick around. Just enjoy watching stuff getting done. So the system, the building, the garage, is not behaving as expected. Whilst it's dry, in the sense that the roof isn't leaking, it's still damp in here because it exchanges air with the outside. And that means that all of the softwood, as you can start to see up there, is starting to develop green mould. All of the panels around the edge are softwood. The panels on the wall are softwood. They're starting to develop mould, and I really don't want to be breathing that stuff in. So we've got to do something about it. I've got anti-mould paint. What I'm worried about is what it looks like on the other side. I might have to take a panel apart and have a look. Every system, be it software, mechanical, or in my case, a building, has emergent properties, behaviours that can only be seen once it's running. For software, this might be response times, memory footprints. For electrical systems, it's power draw, thermal dissipation. For me, it's how the building interacts with atmospheric damp. Whilst you can try to plan for these things up front, sometimes you just have to run the system, see what happens, and then work out where to go from there. Experimentation, observation, and adjustment. Thankfully, behind the wall, the green mould is minimal, mostly close to the gap between the sheets of plywood. What this tells me is the damp is in the interior of the garage. It's not coming through the walls. Where in the interior? Probably coming through either the roof or the doors. It only appears to be the cheap softwood ply. The expensive hardwood face ply is mostly unaffected. This is the Yorkshire winter rearing its head. Living on the top of a hill means sometimes living in the clouds. Clouds are damp, which is creating the ideal conditions for the green mould. The Yorkshire winter is also a double whammy. The garage is unheated, and the temperature is barely above freezing, when both the anti-mould paint and the varnish for the shells require temperatures of around 10 degrees centigrade in order to ensure that the water can evaporate out properly. I can't warm the garage up because the tortoise is currently hibernating in the garage, and the tortoise needs a nice consistent temperature below 10 degrees. Time to cut to an action shot of the tortoise hibernating. Hang in there, it'll get more exciting. By about March. So I need to cut my losses and ignore sunk costs. The softwood ply that I had been using, shuttering ply, is not surviving in the cold and slightly damp environment. Absolutely everything is just riddled with green mould, and it's all warped. It's just being annoying. Now, I may have spent £50-60 on a couple of sheets of that. I'm just going to have to write that off and start again using the slightly more expensive hardwood ply. Thankfully, I have a couple of sheets in stock in the garage, ready for doing the lean-to, which I will have to replace at a later date. but given I haven't started the lean-to, I've got time to do that. Oh well, time to rip it all out and then paint all the walls with the antifungal paint. Even the hardwood ply hasn't survived completely unscathed.
The weather has changed. The garage is now too cold for the tortoise, so I've had to move it into the porch, which is holding at a steady 5 degrees centigrade. That means I can now try to heat the garage to reach a temperature where it's possible to paint the walls. However, to get at the walls means moving everything off the shelves, piling it in the middle, and moving the benches. Walls clean of mould, they can now be repainted again. White on white. It doesn't even look like progress is being made, but it is. This is refactoring. Refactoring is about changing the internal structure of a system without changing its external behaviours. The work being done on the garage means that it will be functionally identical to where it was 3 months ago, but, hopefully, now more resilient to the damp. Having moved everything out, it now needs to go back. Reassembly is the reverse of disassembly. The shelves going back in are varnished hardwood faced ply, and I take the opportunity to build some cubby holes for the smaller tools.
We should have a conversation about quality and getting the right level of quality. This is a set of shelves for the garage, for tools. It doesn't need to be perfect. Indeed, it really isn't. There is split timber. Everything is all a little bit wonky. I could have made it out of oak. I could have done proper joinery, housed joints, everything perfect. And it would have taken me 10 times as long, would have cost me probably 10 times as much. And really not worth it for just storing tools. It's going to get bashed and dented and damaged anyway. So, always think, what is the appropriate level of quality for what I've got to do? Plywood is good enough.
Things are starting to find their permanent home after 9 months of being in boxes that have been perpetually shifted around the garage to create space.
The last bit of mould, and finally clear enough in the garage that I can get the steps in to get up to it.
The downlighters are fitted to plywood boards, which were the offcuts from lining the walls. Because they are softwood, these boards are also going green. They are replaced with pressure-treated timber. Having fitted up the lighting once already, I know that there are some improvements that can be made second time around. The pressure-treated timber is thick enough to allow me to route a small groove into it to enable the cables to run through neatly. And I take the opportunity to pick up a 4-pack of timber so the lighting can be extended along the rear bench. One of the Agile principles is to build things up incrementally. I'm doing that with the lighting. Each section is built up and tested before moving on. The lights down the side are complete and working. Time to move on to the lights across the rear.
Measure twice, cut once. I've held the piece of timber up onto the roof beam just to check that the marks where the light fixture should go are actually lining up with the midpoints of the walls.
Complete. All of the workbenches now have decent lighting from above. Finally, there's one last thing to try to bring the moisture content down. Fit a dehumidifier. Siting it in the attic isn't ideal, but tucked at the back means that it's in the open area. It does, however, make it easier to run a pipe to the drainage point, as the pipe can run through the eaves of the garage, pass through the soffits, and then drain into the guttering downpipe.
There's a teeny tiny gap there.
This is going to be running pretty much permanently. Emptying the container every 24 hours isn't practical. A permanent drain is essential. The drain is installed to run smoothly down from the dehumidifier to the soffits. The soffit run itself is level, but as long as the starting point is higher than the exit point, the system will drain down. It takes a bit of fettling to get the pipework to behave. The eventual fix is to tilt the dehumidifier slightly. That done, it drains out through the pipework rather than into the internal container. The guttering downpipe needs a hole for the dehumidifier's drainage hose to go into. Holding the round pipe in the drill press at the right angle proves challenging. Cable ties act as an improvised vice. It works well enough for the level of accuracy required. I don't need hundredths of a millimetre. Close enough is good enough. Once the drainage hose has been pushed through the soffits, the guttering can be reassembled.
My best guess at the moment is that the damp is coming in through the roof. So if the current changes we've made don't work, then the next iteration would be to insulate the roof, possibly the walls, breathable membranes, so the moisture goes out but not in. But we have to let the current experiment run. see what happens over the next month or two, and then decide where to go from there. And all of this has meant I'm not making much progress with the endeavours and the roadmap. The dates for them keep slipping further and further into the future. But before I can get to them, there's still one or two little things I do need to sort out with the garage. But that's for next time.